Hi students, in this lecture we are going to study some important metabolic reactions of the protein, carbohydrate and lipids. When we consume proteins, that dietary proteins converted into amino acids. Dietary proteins converted into amino acids. Okay. When we consume carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates like starch, complex carbohydrates converted into glucose. The digestive reactions we already studied in chapter digestion or human nutrition. And third one is lipids. These are the three respiratory substrate which are on the radar during energy production: dietary proteins, carbohydrates and lipids. Lipids get converted into fatty acid and glycerol. Fatty acids and glycerol. That glucose will undergo glycolysis. To produce pyruvic acid, okay. Amino acids undergo three different processes. Either they undergo deamination to produce ammonia, that ammonia will enter into the urea cycle. When combined with the carbon dioxide, it will produce urea through urea cycle, or also known as ornithine cycle. Some amino acids will convert it into pyruvic acid. So which amino acids get converted into pyruvic acid? Like alanine, cysteine, glycine, serine. Alanine, cysteine, glycine, serine, tryptophan. These are metabolic reactions. Tryptophan and threonine. These amino acids get converted into pyruvic acid. Lipids, when undergo digestive processes, it will convert it into fatty acid and glycerol in the presence of enzyme lipase. We know that fatty acid undergo beta oxidation and get converted into pyruvic acid. Beta oxidation. Okay, glucose get converted into pyruvic acid by the process known as glycolysis. Okay, excess amount of glucose get converted into glycogen. In human body, glucose get converted into glycogen. And on scarcity of glucose, glycogen again get converted into glucose. When there is a scarcity of glucose, glycogen again converted into glucose. The conversion of glucose to glycogen is called as glycogenesis. And the conversion of glycogen to glucose is called as glycogenolysis. Lysis means breakdown. Here glycolysis means breakdown of glucose into two molecules of pyruvic acid. We will discuss that process in detail. Lipids converted into fatty acid and glycerol. Fatty acid converted into pyruvic acid by the process known as beta oxidation. Actually, beta oxidation, the product of beta oxidation is The product of beta oxidation is acetyl coenzyme, not pyruvic acid. Acetyl coenzyme. Acetyl CoA. The product of beta oxidation is acetyl CoA. Pyruvic acid also can be converted into acetyl coenzyme, and some amino acids also get converted into acetyl coenzyme. These are the metabolic processes which are takes place in our body, and it means that when we eat protein, when we eat carbohydrate, when we eat lipids, all these three respiratory substances can be converted into acetyl coenzyme. So why this acetyl coenzyme is too much important? We will going to discuss that part. So you must know the outline of the respiratory substance and how they convert into acetyl coenzyme in detail. Conversion of pyruvic acid to acetyl coenzyme is known as link reaction, or also known as acetylation of pyruvate. Okay, now I am going to focus only on glucose. Okay, in this chapter we will study the processes processes occurring on glucose, by means of which we finally got the energy. Okay, so we are targeting glucose. This is very important outline which includes catabolic and anabolic reactions. Okay, now we will start with the glucose only. Amino acid, the fate of amino acid can be converted into ammonia by the process named as deamination. This occurs in liver. Okay, some amino acid is converted into pyruvic acid. Which amino acid converted into pyruvic acid? Alanine, cysteine, glycine, serine, tryptophan and threonine. When some amino acids get converted into acetyl coenzyme like isoleucine, leucine and tryptophan. Which amino acid is converted into acetyl coenzyme? Isoleucine, leucine and tryptophan. Okay, so there are more than 200 amino acids which are present in our cytoplasm, but out of which 20 amino acids are very important. Out of 20, 12 amino acids are essential amino acids and 8 amino acids are non-essential amino acids. Essential and non-essential, and some amino acids are semi-essential. Essential amino acids we must take through the food, and non-essential amino acids are get prepared in our body, so do not take through food. Dietary proteins converted to amino acids. After digestive processes, amino acids get converted to pyruvic acid. Amino acids can be converted into acetyl CoA. Amino acids, excess amino acids undergo deamination to produce ammonia, and ammonia when combined with the carbon dioxide it will produce urea through urea cycle or ornithine cycle. Similarly, fate of carbohydrate and fate of lipid we already discussed. Now the target of the chapter is actually what happened with the glucose. We are going to discuss the things in which we can understand what happened with the glucose. So glucose will be on the top now, and glucose, we know that glucose undergo process named as glycolysis. Glucose undergo process named as glycolysis and converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid. Glucose which is 6 carbon compound undergo process named as glycolysis to produce two molecules of pyruvic acid. You can write pyruvic acid or pyruvate, the meaning is same, as well as two molecules of NADH2 and two molecules of adenosine triphosphate, that is ATP. Okay, by the process named as glycolysis. So conversion of glucose into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, 2 molecules of NADHD and 2 molecules of ATP by stepwise manner, and different enzymes are involved in this process. That process is known as glycolysis. Stepwise enzymatic breakdown of glucose into pyruvic acid is called as glycolysis. Okay, so what happened with the pyruvic acid now? Pyruvic acid can be converted into either ethyl alcohol, or pyruvic acid can be converted into lactic acid. Okay, or pyruvic acid can be converted into acetyl coenzyme A. So these are the three fates of pyruvic acid. म्हणजे pyruvic acid सोबत काय घडणार बॉडी मध्ये आपल्या सेलच्या सायटोप्लाझम मध्ये? ग्लायकोलिसिस takes place in cytoplasm. So what are the enzymes required for glycolysis? All those enzymes present in cytoplasm. That's why this takes place in cytoplasm. The products of glycolysis is pyruvic acid, 2 NADH2 and 2 ATP. That pyruvic acid may be converted depending upon the types of respiration actually these products form. Pyruvic acid converted into acetyl coenzyme A, that is 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A, acetyl CoA by the process known as link reaction. Okay, and for this conversion one important enzyme is required called as pyruvate dehydrogenase. Wherever enzyme dehydrogenase come in this process, dehydrogenase enzyme required for reduction. Decarboxylase for removal of carbon dioxide. Okay, oxygenase required for oxidation. So enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase or pyruvate decarboxylase, because in this process 2 molecules of acetyl CoA plus 2 molecules of NADH2 and 2 molecules of CO2 are produced. So from pyruvic acid to acetyl CoA 2 molecules of CO2 also produced. So carbon dioxide get removed from pyruvic acid. That's why this process is also decarboxylation. As NADH2 is formed from, how NADH2 is formed? It is formed from NAD. So NAD का कन्वर्जन NADH2 में हो रहा है, मतलब क्या? NAD का कन्वर्जन NADH2 में हो रहा है, इसका मतलब है NAD में हाइड्रोजन ऐड हो रहा है. So this process is reduction process. Okay, 2 molecules of acetyl CoA, 2 molecules of NADH2 and 2 molecules of CO2 are formed. As CO2 is removed. Pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon compound. Please keep in mind 3 carbon compound, but acetyl fraction is 2 carbon. So 1 carbon get lost, and that lost carbon is present in the carbon dioxide. As here it is 2 molecule, so that's why it is a 2 carbon dioxide. From 1 pyruvic acid 1 carbon dioxide is produced. From 2 pyruvic acid 2 carbon dioxide produced. If here it is 1 pyruvic acid, we will get 1 acetyl CoA. 2 pyruvic acid, so we will get 2 acetyl CoA. This process, link reaction. The product of link reaction is a acetyl coenzyme. Link reaction is also known as acetylation of pyruvate. Another name for link reaction is acetylation of pyruvate. Okay, this is the one fate of pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid के साथ क्या हो सकता है? तो एक बात है, ए हो सकती है pyruvic acid कन्वर्ट हो सकता है एसिटाइल कोए में, नहीं तो pyruvic acid कन्वर्ट हो सकता है अल्डिहाइड में. acetaldehyde get converted into acetaldehyde, and that acetaldehyde get converted into ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. Here, if it is 2 pyruvic acid, then we will get 2 acetaldehyde. Pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon compound. Acetaldehyde formula is CH3CHO. So 1 carbon is removed. Here it is only 2 carbon acetaldehyde. Ethyl alcohol is C2H5OH. That carbon dioxide is lost here. This is nothing but pyruvic acid का conversion acetaldehyde में हो रहा है वो decarboxylation reaction है. The name of reaction is decarboxylation. Okay, this CO2 is actually from here. CO2 is lost. Okay, 2 pyruvic acid, 2 CO2 is lost. So the product of pyruvic acid conversion, when pyruvic acid get converted into ethyl alcohol, that whole process is known as alcoholic fermentation. That whole process is known as alcoholic. Pyruvic acid to ethyl alcohol, this whole process is known as alcoholic fermentation. And this is required enzyme zymase. That enzyme zymase obtained from yeast. So when we use yeast on any sugar, we will get alcohol, and this is the common method of alcohol production. When we use yeast on the sugar, we will get ethyl alcohol as a byproduct. Okay, this is called as alcoholic fermentation. Now, pyruvic acid can be converted into ethyl alcohol by yeast. Pyruvic acid can be converted into acetyl coenzyme A, and pyruvic acid can be converted into lactic acid directly. Lactic acid. This process required lactate dehydrogenase, enzyme known as lactate dehydrogenase, and the name of reaction is lactic acid fermentation. Okay, actually anaerobic respiration is also called as fermentation. Both the process, alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation, do not require oxygen. Lactic acid is produced by lactobacillus by using the sugar which is present in the milk. Lactic acid also formed in our muscle when the muscles undergo strenuous exercise. Lactic acid, pyruvic acid converted into lactic acid. Instead of it converted into acetyl-CoA, pyruvic acid get converted into lactic acid when muscles undergo strenuous exercise. Now, lactic acid is the end product of the pyruvic acid metabolism on one side. Lactic acid is the end product on in the yeast of pyruvic acid fat. Okay, pyruvic acid ethyl alcohol मध्ये कन्वर्ट होऊ शकतं, yeast मध्ये pyruvic acid लॅक्टोबॅसिलस मध्ये लॅक्टिक ऍसिड मध्ये कन्वर्ट होऊ शकतं, आणि ज्यांच्याकडे मायटोकॉन्ड्रिया आहे त्यांच्यामध्ये pyruvic acid कन्वर्ट होतं ऍसिटाइल कोएन्झाइम मध्ये. आपल्या मसल मध्ये मायटोकॉन्ड्रिया असतात, पण जर खूप एक्सरसाइज झाली मसलला तर pyruvic acid मोठ्या प्रमाणावर जनरेट झालेला असतो. त्यावेळेस ग्लुकोजचं ग्लायकोलिसिस होतो, मोठ्या प्रमाणावर pyruvic acid जनरेट होतो, आणि तितका वेळ भेटत नाही. मायटोकॉन्ड्रिया रिक्वायर्ड टाइम टू कन्वर्ट ऍसिटाइल कोएन्झाइम इनटू एटीपी. ओके, आता ऍसिटाइल कोएन्झाइमची एटीपी एनर्जी कशी फॉर्म होते? ऍसिटाइल कोएन्झाइम अंडरगो Krebs cycle and it will produce NADH2 and FADH2. So how many NADH2 are produced? So total 6 NADH2 are produced from 2 acetyl-CoA. So from single acetyl-CoA 3 NADH2 are produced and 2 FADH2 are produced when acetyl coenzyme undergo Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle. It is also called as tricarboxylic acid cycle. tricarboxylic acid cycle, TCA cycle, because the first stable product formed in a Krebs cycle contains 3 carboxylic acid group. That's why it is called as tricarboxylic acid cycle. We already studied dicarboxylic acid cycle. Tell me the another name for dicarboxylic acid cycle in comment box. 6NADH2, 2FADH2. Okay. So finally, the product of glucose turns into the final product of glucose turns into 6NADH2 and 2FADH2 from one glucose molecule. Okay. From one glucose molecule, 2 pyruvic acid are produced. Pyruvic acid contains 3 carbon. Pyruvic acid converted into acetyl-CoA, which is a 2 carbon compound. So one carbon is removed in the form of carbon dioxide. That acetyl-CoA undergo Krebs cycle, which is again 10-step reaction. Okay, and the final product is 6NADH2 and 2FADH2. As it is cycle, the reactant get converted into intermediate forms, different products intermediate forms, and again we get reactant itself. So that's why it is a cycle. Acetyl-CoA enzyme is converted into 6NADH2 to FADH2. So final NADH2 produced while conversion of glucose into mitochondria. Glucose processing झालं cytoplasm मध्ये pyruvic acid तयार झालं. Pyruvic acid will enter into the mitochondria, and in mitochondria it get converted into total amount of NADH2. So how many total amount of NADH2 are produced? This NADH2 and FADH2. NADH2 and FADH2 enters into electron transport system, ETS, electron transport system. ETS, electron transport system, also known as electron transport chain, or it is also known as oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, and during this oxidative phosphorylation, one NADH2, during this oxidative phosphorylation, one NADH2 get converted into 3 ATP molecules, and one FADH2 get converted into 2 ATP molecules. Okay, so total NADH2, how many total NADH2 are produced while converting glucose into still glucose, the product of glucose entered into oxidative phosphorylation, total NADH2. Here 6, 2 and this 2. So total 10 NADH2. So balance sheet, or I can write from 10 NADH2, how many ATP molecules are produced? 10 into 3 is equal to 30 ATP. FADH2 from how many FADH2 are produced here? In whole process, only 2 FADH2 are produced. From 2 FADH2, 2 into 2, that is 4 ATP. Okay, and how many direct ATPs are produced? Direct ATPs are produced in glycolysis, 2 ATP, direct ATPs. Okay, as well as in Krebs cycle also, 2 ATPs are produced directly. So total directly produced ATP are 4. 2 plus 2, 4. That is known as substrate level phosphorylation will produce 2 ATP. So total amount of ATPs are produced during respiration is 38 ATP. 38 ATP. Okay. So glucose to pyruvic acid glycolysis will produce 2 ATP, and remaining ATPs are produced in further processes like in link reaction. 2 NADH2 are produced. That NADH2 when enter into the electron transport chain, it will generate 6 ATP. Okay, and in Krebs cycle we get 6 NADH2 and 2 FADH2. 6 NADH2, each NADH2 will convert it into 3 ATP. during this process. During this process, so the largest amount of ATPs are generated in electron transport system. During glycolysis, only 5% energy is produced. 5% energy is produced. Glycolysis is also called as EMP pathway, depending upon the which is based on the name of scientist who discovered glycolysis: Embeden, Meru, and Barnes. EMP pathway. This is actually a whole scenario of the chapter. Okay, alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation takes place in the absence of oxygen. So it is a anaerobic respiration. It is the part of anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration includes alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation, final product is ethyl alcohol. Lactic acid fermentation, final product is lactic acid. Here there is a no decarboxylation occur. No decarboxylation मतलब कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड प्रोड्यूस नहीं होता. That's why the number of carbon atom present in pyric acid and lactic acid will be same, 3 carbon 3 carbon. Okay, this is the whole scenario of the remaining chapter, and in next lecture we will discuss glycolysis in detail. Thank you.